The primary goal of the beef industry is to provide consumers with a delicious, nutritious meat product at a reasonable cost. In order for beef to remain affordable, it must be produced as efficiently as possible. If efficiency is to be increased, the cow-calf producer must be able to supply the other segments of the beef industry with the type of calves that can meet their requirements. The meat packer wants cattle that will grade choice with a minimum of external fat. The feeder wants calves that will gain rapidly on relatively few pounds of feed. These too must grade choice without getting too fat. These demands can be met partially through proper management practices and partially through genetics. It is important that the cow-calf producer choose breeding stock very carefully in order to provide calves that are able to meet the demands of the industry. The cow-calf producer must consider many things when selecting breeding stock. For example, which breed types best fit the environment? If crossbreeding, which breeds will provide the most heterosis or hybrid vigor? How do the individuals within these breeds perform? Once these important questions have been answered, the producer can begin selection of breeding stock. The most important individual in the herd is the bull. In a single sire herd, the bull is responsible for half of the genetic makeup of the entire calf crop. Each calf gets half of its genetic makeup from the bull and half from its dam. Bull selection should be made based on performance records, structural soundness, conformation, and temperament. Performance records include measures of growth, maternal ability that will be passed on to daughters, and calving ease scores. Bulls should also be known to be free of any genetic defects he may pass on to his offspring. By studying the EPDs, or expected progeny differences in sire summaries, the producer can accurately compare the bulls within a given breed. From the EPDs, the producer can predict how each bull's offspring should perform compared to the offspring of other bulls within the breed. These summaries take into account the performance records of the individual, his parents, grandparents, half-siblings, full siblings, and offspring. These types of records are very important when selecting breeding animals. Structural soundness is best evaluated from the ground up. The animal should stand squarely on all 4 feet with toes facing forward. The prospective buyer should inspect the feet, toes, pasterns, knees, hocks, sheath, and testicles. Soundness of the feet and legs is very important because bulls often must travel long distances in order to cover all of the cows in the herd. Lameness in the herd bull can result in reduced reproductive efficiency of the herd. The feet should be relatively large and rounded with toes facing forward. They should be free of any cracking, infection, or injury. The toes should be of equal size and not curved upwards or overlapping. The pasterns should be strong and straight with no signs of weakness. Knees should flex easily and show no signs of stiffness or swelling. Bulls should not be over at the knees or back at the knees. The hocks serve to absorb shock and must be able to support the bull's entire weight during breeding. The hocks should have enough angle to flex and bend while the bull is walking. Post-legged animals, or those without enough set to the hock, cannot walk long distances comfortably. Sickle-hocked individuals, or those with too much set, may not be able to support the weight of the bull during breeding. This may be an unsightly condition, but unless extreme, it is not as serious as post-leggedness. Injuries to the sheath and penis are very serious and can cause permanent damage. The sheath should be close to the body, and no prepuce should be exposed when the bull is relaxed. In rough or brushy country, bulls that have a pendulous sheath or exposed prepuce often sustain serious injuries. Selection for shorter sheaths is very important in Brahman-influenced cattle that have large amounts of excess skin in this area. The testicles should be of adequate size for the age and breed type of the bull, a minimum of 28 centimeters in Brahman-influenced cattle and 32 centimeters in other breeds. They should be of equal size, firm but not hard, and free of lumps, scar tissue, and infection. The main goal of the beef producer is to produce meat. Therefore, muscling is a very important trait in beef animals. However, more is not always better. When it comes to muscling, extremes should be avoided. Too much muscle has been associated with calving difficulties and can result in structural problems. On the other hand, bulls with extremely light muscling may not have the endurance to complete the entire breeding season. Furthermore, calves from extremely light-muscled bulls do not grow as well and are less desirable to feeders and packers than heavily muscled calves. Temperament is a very important selection criteria. Animals with poor temperaments can become a danger to themselves and to the rancher. A bull with a good disposition is much safer. These animals are less likely to become nervous and injure themselves or someone else. Once the individual has been selected based on performance records, structural soundness, conformation, and temperament, he should be evaluated by a veterinarian to determine his breeding soundness.
The exam is broken down into three major parts. First, we have the physical examination of the animal. You should examine the animal for overall soundness and his ability to function in the pasture. Now, this exam will include checking his eyes, mouth, feet, and legs. Animals with injury or any kind of damage in these areas may not be able to effectively travel in a pasture setting and then physically breed the cows. Now, this is especially true in the case of foot and leg injuries. Along with the visual exam of the animal, the accessory glands in the bull should be palpated for normality. Now, in some cases, the bull can have enlarged glands such as the prostate or the vesicular glands. These may be indicative of either injury or an infection, and both of these can cause problems with sperm viability. So it's very important that a good rectal examination be performed on the bulls prior to going back in with the cows. Secondly, we want to measure the scrotal circumference of an animal as an indication of sperm production. Now, the scrotal circumference of the bulls will increase with age. When we measure the circumference, we want to grasp the scrotum itself firmly in our hands and force the testicles to the lower portion of the scrotal sac. Then we place a tape around the testicles approximately in the center portion. As an idea of what to expect, on 12 to 14-month-old bulls, they should have a minimum circumference of 30 to 34 centimeters to be considered good. Anything that's less than 30 centimeters is probably going to be a poor quality animal, and anything over 34 centimeters at this age would be an excellent quality. Now, 15 to 20-month-old bulls should have a circumference of 31 to 36 centimeters. When you get to the next age group, it'd be 21 to 30 months of age, and they should be at least 32 to 38 centimeters. Any bulls that are over 31 months of age should be at least 34 to 39 centimeters. These should be your basic guidelines to follow when using scrotal circumference as a measure of fertility. After the scrotal circumference is measured, the animal should be electroejaculated to obtain a semen sample for analysis. The electroejaculator applies a small electrical charge through a rectal probe which is placed over the vesicular glands. The probe itself has 3 rows of electrodes to stimulate the glands. The ejaculator unit has 2 controlling knobs. The first knob controls the amount of current, and the second knob is a rheostat to intermittently apply the current itself. With the animal restrained, the rectal probe is lubricated with a KY jelly and then inserted to the rectum. The long hairs around the prepuce should be trimmed using a pair of scissors. Sometimes these hairs can wrap around the penis and cause problems. The trimming will also give us a cleaner sample during the ejaculation process. With the current on the ejaculator set at its lowest setting, the rheostat should be intermittently turned on and off several times in succession. Starting at the lowest setting is best so that we can slowly work the animal up to the proper amount for ejaculation. After a few stimulations, the current is increased slowly, and then the stimulations continue. The current will normally be increased several times until the bull itself begins to get an erection and starts to produce fluid. The first amount of fluid produced is accessory fluid and acts to clean out the tract. Now, this fluid should be clear. The accessory fluid should be followed by the sperm ejaculate, which will be a cloudy white color. This portion of the ejaculate should be recovered for evaluation. The bull should normally produce about 10 to 12 mils of semen. Once the semen sample is recovered, a drop needs to be placed on a warm slide and then evaluated for motility and morphology. The sperm cells should have a rapid forward movement, and the sample should have a minimum of defective or abnormal cells.
When selecting replacement heifers, a rancher should choose the oldest and largest at weaning. These heifers were most likely born to cows that calve early and give adequate amounts of milk. Heifers should be selected from cows that raise high weaning weight calves that have a low mature weight. A smaller framed cow costs less to maintain than a larger framed cow. These heifers should then be evaluated for structural soundness and temperament. Feet and legs should be evaluated the same as in bulls. The heifer must be able to support the weight of the bull during breeding and the weight of the calf and fluids for almost a year during gestation. Udder development should be evaluated for teat number and placement. After weaning, heifers should be fed a ration that will allow them to reach 65% of their mature weight by breeding time. This target weight ranges from 650 to 725 pounds, depending on the breed type of the heifer. At 15 months of age, most heifers will show first heat in this weight range. In order to calve at 2 years of age, these heifers must be bred at 14 or 15 months of age. Heifers that calve as 2-year-olds have been shown to have one more calf in their lifetime than heifers that calve at 3 years of age. 3-year-old heifers are larger and experience fewer calving problems than 2-year-olds, but the reduction in dystocia does not offset the money lost from the production of one less calf. To reduce calving problems, bulls with low birth weight EPDs should be selected for use on first calf heifers. Although weaning weight tends to decrease as birth weight decreases, a calf with a lower weaning weight is preferable to a calf that does not survive the birthing process.
Shown in this diagram is the functional reproductive anatomy of the bull. Let me first orient you to 4 structures of the anatomy of the bull, one being the vertebral column, the rectum, the urinary bladder, and the pelvic bone. The testis is housed in the scrotum, which is suspended several inches below the body cavity to allow the temperature to be maintained at 4 to 7 degrees below body temperature. The testis is the site of the manufacture of the sperm cells, which then pass from the testis to the epididymis for storage until needed at the time of breeding. At the time of breeding, the sperm cells would pass from the epididymis into the ductus deferens and up to the accessory glands. The accessory glands would then mix seminal fluid with the sperm cells and then allow passage of them through the penis to the outside of the body cavity. The free end of the penis is housed in the sheath. During the ejaculatory process, the retractor penis muscle would relax, allowing the straightening of the sigmoid flexure so that the penis could then extend from the body cavity to allow for the mating act. We will now discuss the functional anatomy of the reproductive tract of a mature cow. This is the vagina of the cow's reproductive tract. This is the part of the reproductive tract in which the bull's penis would be introduced and the sperm cells deposited. This is the cervix of this non-pregnant cow's reproductive tract. This is the portion of the reproductive tract during artificial insemination in which you must pass the catheter through in order to deposit the semen near the uterine body. This is the uterine body of the cow's reproductive tract. It is a small area about 1 to 2 inches in length which connects both of the uterine horns with each other. This is one of the 2 uterine horns of the cow's reproductive tract. During pregnancy, this is the area in which the embryo and fetus will develop. During the process of parturition, the fetus will pass from the uterine horn, through the uterine body, through the cervix, out into the vagina, and through the external genitalia. This is the oviduct of the cow's reproductive tract. It extends from the tip of the uterine horn over to near the ovary. This is the structure in which the egg travels in this direction to about mid part of the oviduct. The sperm will travel up in this direction, and when they meet, fertilization should occur. Shown here is an oviduct from the cow's reproductive tract that has been dissected out. This is the tip of the uterine horn, and this would be the end of the oviduct nearest the ovary. At this end of the oviduct, we have the fimbria, which is the end that encloses over the ovary to catch the egg during ovulation. This is the ovary of the cow. This is the source of the eggs, which would then travel down the oviduct and be fertilized and then end up as embryos in the uterine horn. This is a corpus luteum. This particular structure produces progesterone that maintains pregnancy in the cow, and the corpus luteum was formed from a follicle which ovulated, that produced the egg that became fertilized and would then be an embryo in the uterine horn. This is a cross-section of the corpus luteum in the cow. Notice its yellow color. Again, this is the structure in the cow ovary that would produce progesterone to maintain pregnancy. This is one of the parts of the anatomy of the cow's reproductive tract that does not directly influence reproduction. This is the urinary bladder, the storage place for urine, which would then pass from the bladder out into the posterior part of the vagina and out to the vulva of the cow during urination.
This is an example of very high quality semen. Note the very rapid movement of the sperm cells in a forward motion. This is an example of a very poor sample of sperm. Notice the very slow movement and a very low percent motility. We only have approximately maybe 20% motility here, but the main thing is a very slow movement. We prefer to see a very rapid movement. A sample such as this is such poor quality that probably will not result in a pregnancy. This is a very typical unfertilized egg. A very small cell in the center of the zona pellucida that is actually touching one side. There's a large vitellin space on the opposite side. The coloration here is extremely black. This is very typical of a large number of unfertilized eggs.
Now let's review what we've seen. In order to meet the demands of today's beef industry, the beef cattle producer must be very careful in the selection of his breeding stock. Sire summaries and EPDs are available for individual comparisons. Other traits like structural and reproductive soundness should also be evaluated. When selecting bulls for use with first calf heifers, birth weight should be a major factor. Heifers should be selected with the brood cow herd in mind. They must be structurally correct, reach puberty early enough to calve at 2 years of age, and should come from cows that have a history of weaning heavy calves, while they themselves do not have an extremely high mature weight, and they should have good dispositions. The functional anatomy of the bull includes the testes, which are the site of sperm production, the epididymis, where the sperm are stored, the ductus deferens, through which the sperm travel on the way out of the body, the accessory glands that produce the seminal fluids, and the penis, the organ of copulation. The functional anatomy of the cow includes the ovary from which the egg is released, the fimbria that catches the egg and funnels it into the oviduct, where the egg awaits fertilization, the uterine horn where the egg will implant if fertilized, the small uterine body at the juncture of the two uterine horns, the cervix, which serves as the passageway for sperm into the uterus, and the vagina, the area where copulation and deposition of semen occurs. Cow-calf producers must remember the calves they produce are the basis for the entire beef industry. In order for producers to prosper, these calves must fit each segment of the industry. Proper selection, management, and a basic understanding of the reproductive systems are critical steps toward achieving success.